Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to the Hump Day edition of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, booger free after last night, according to little Timmy James. And he's in studio tonight. We got a great show coming up here. John Ramirez, former CIA agent, is here with us to discuss the intelligence community and UFOs. This is going to be a great show with John tonight. But before we bring John on, let us say hello to each and every one of you. We got Race Fan in the gold medal position, Eternity Eternal with a silver, Fast Hemi with a bronze medal tonight, Bar Madison, how you doing? Robert Lamoth, Byron McDonald, looking forward to this episode. There's a taco time lunch waiting for you in Kamloops, Dave. Oh, yeah, Byron, that's my language right there. That's my language. All right. Little Timmy James in the chat room. How you doing, bud? Linda Thompson. Nice to see you. Lovely Linda Thompson. And thank you for kicking off this super chat tonight, as a super chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you very much, Linda. Appreciate that. Just another guy named Harry T-Bone, my man. Paramarv is here. Paramarv will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Road Flare, Necessary Dialogue, Cosmic Joe, and Shaq Valet. Nice to have you all here. Frankie B, Keith McCormick, good to have you here. Kitty Caddywhack, Mel WD40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a show about the intelligence agencies nice and lubed. That way you get the information from them. So thank you, Mel, for lubing us up as we speak. Hello there, Chris. Teen, nice to see you. It's a nice short one tonight. JSCO, how you doing? And you're welcome about the Dan Burris show. Appreciate that. Amanda's Crazy Life channel. How are you? Amanda will be signing autographs after the show for the first time, so be gentle. Line up to the right of the studio if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Tim Mothman and his goatee. Nice to see you both as we continue on with our roll call tonight. Corey, how you doing? Thanks for coming on in. And Izzy Beth, good to see you again. All right, scrolling on down. There's Lee the Bee. And who's next here? Scrolling. Walter Kochabinski, thank you for coming on in. Dragonfly, nice to see you. Millennium, my man. Thomas Rock, thank you for joining us tonight as we continue on with our roll call. Number 36 in your program tonight, starting at left wing from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Janssen. Mama Catherine, I love you, my dear. Yes, I will drive safe for you tonight when I leave after the show. I promise you, I really do. Xanos, thank you for coming on in. We appreciate you. Operation Shutdown, good to see you again. And who is next here? Scrolling on down. Noble Patrick, nice to have you here. Big conversations in the chat room. Kurt M., thanks for joining us as we continue on. And there's Alien Critter. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. I know my throat's feeling better when I can get a good "the" in. Glenn John McEnroe, the pride of Wimbledon. Jeremy Jones, nice to see you. Al Garay over on Twitch. So excited for this show. Did 750 on the leg press 37 times. Yeah, his legs are jacked tonight for this one. Fast Hemi, good to see you. And let's see, Kurt M. Matthew Goodka. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. John Ramirez, former CIA agent, is here to talk about UFOs and the intelligence community. We're going to get a schooling tonight, so be ready for that. We are in roll call on our YouTube side. Ian McFadden, thank you for coming on in. Good morning to you. John Jackson, thanks for coming on in. We appreciate that. The lovely and talented Kira, nice to see you. I hope you're feeling better today. And Christine Lynn, nice to see you. Amanda, hi, Dave. I love you. I love you too, Amanda. I love you too. All right. Commonwealth Andrew, good morning to you. And let's see, Phineas on X, thanks for coming on in. Austin Gilbert, we'll go to the French version. Austin Gilbert, welcome to SOR Chat. Everybody, do me a favor, throw those horns up. Let's rock.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott.
Thank you for in
wherever you are. This
we
call Earth.
You
can follow us on our website. And of course, follow us on social media at Spaced Out Radio on X, on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Help make the world better. By his name.
Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
We got a great show coming at you tonight. Former CIA member John Ramirez is going to do a very rare show because he doesn't do many shows anymore. But we're glad to have him here on Spaced Out Radio. It's amazing. I offered him a glass of water down in San Francisco at UFO Con, and he accepted it. I was able to put some interview medicine in there, say, come on, John, let's do an interview. Let's do an interview. And he said, okay. So we were able to lock that in. We're going to have fun with John tonight. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller is here for another creepy story. We're going to follow that up with little Timmy James and the UFO report. So let's get right to it, shall we? John Ramirez is a former CIA officer who served in various roles over a career spanning more than 2 decades. With a background in intelligence collection and analysis, John worked primarily on the Directorate of Science and Technology. Yeah, in other words, he's smart. He's a smart guy. Yes, focusing on signals intelligence and space-related operations, he holds a degree in political science and international affairs, and his work involved deep engagement with national security issues. John has become a vocal figure in public discussion surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena, after drawing from his government experience to offer context on how such phenomena are perceived and investigated within intelligence circles. And that's why we're bringing him on tonight. John Ramirez, you know, you've only been on this show once before, but this is the first time I'm going to be interviewing you. So I'm very proud. I'll get you to unmute your microphone, and we'll get this going here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks for the introduction there. And
it was great to see you in San Francisco, my friend.
I know. I don't travel as much anymore. I don't do interviews. Basically, I have nothing left to say. I'm not one of those people that need to appear in these podcast interview shows. I mean, I said what I said. You can go look on YouTube to see what I've said, and I'm not going to add any more to it. I'm happy to add context to what other people are saying, and I think that's what my role will be from now on. But as far as any original information, I said everything I could. And I know I retired in 2009, so from 2009 to now, I have no idea what's going on back there, but I know how we work, and I can listen with a keen ear as to what other people are saying, and I can call BS when it needs to be called. But a lot of people are doing a pretty good job of coming out with information, understanding that not everything is allowed to be said right now, but they're doing a pretty good job. So here I am.
When you came out and said what you said a couple of years ago,
Yeah,
you kind of came out of nowhere and started speaking about this topic. And then all of a sudden, poof, you said, that's it. I'm done.
yeah,
That's enough.
right. Yeah. And what motivated me to come out was there was an impression that after Blue Book closed in December of 1969 and officially declared closed in January of 1970, that nothing went on until 2017. Like, oh yeah, we didn't do anything, we weren't interested. And I knew that to be absolutely false. I knew there was continuing interest in UFOs all through those years, all those decades. And we never, especially CIA, never stopped investigating UFOs. It's just that we were in the background, and we did not advertise what we were investigating. And I wanted to bring out, first of all, demystify the intelligence community, the alphabet soup that is the intelligence community, as to who does what to whom, and also try to put some context as to what we were investigating during those years. And so that's why I came out. And so I had my say, I did several interviews on how the intelligence community is structured. And afterwards, I don't see any need because you have other folks coming forward who are witnesses. Um, they're not whistleblowers. I take the point of your guest last night. There are no true whistleblowers yet, except for Eric. I would say Edward Snowden is definitely a whistleblower because he walked out of NSA with top secret documents. But no whistleblower in this topic has walked out with top secret documents. They're not whistleblowers, they're witnesses. They know have information on how they participated in this topic and they wanted to share that information. And that's not whistleblowing because gee whiz, they got DOPSR approval. I think that's Defense Office of Security Publication Review. I went through PCRB, Pre-Publication Classification Review Board. So did Jim Semivan, to be able to say what we say. So I'm not a whistleblower. I mean, they actually approved what I can say. That's not whistleblowing. I just wanted to bring people update on what the IC really is like, who does what. Particularly, I had one slide in that infamous slide deck with 74 slides in it. One slide that I said way back when, my first interview was with Whitley Strieber in October of 2021. And he said, I never heard of NGA, this National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. What is that? And I said, Whitley, that is the most important agency if you're interested in disclosure. That is the most important agency, NGA. Mark my words, NGA is where the data is going to come out of because they have all of the data. They take pictures all over the world. And they also are responsible for taking pictures out into space. Sometimes they turn those satellites around and see what's coming at us, or to look at other people's satellites, other nations' satellites. So they have the data. And sure enough, where did David Grush come from? NGA. And Whitley says, I never heard of it. My second and third, fourth interviews with various podcasters, they never heard of NGA. So that's my contribution. NGA is the most important agency in the IC, not NSA, not CIA, not NRO, and not DIA, NGA. They have the evidence. They take pictures of what's in space, more so than what NASA does.
Wow.
And in
And
fact,
that's
NGA and NASA work together, and NGA has mapped the moon for NASA.
I want to ask you about when you came out. How did that happen? And do you have to ask permission to talk about this, or were you asked to come out and talk about this?
No, I wanted to come out. I was, here's the background story. I don't think I've shared with anyone. Danny Sheehan and Mark Sims and I had a private Zoom conversation. And I explained to Danny, he heard about me through Mark Sims. I explained to Danny what my background was within CIA and why I was interested in this topic. And something that Danny wrote, he wrote that he didn't use my name, but he wrote, yes, a former chief of electronic intelligence at CIA said this, that, and whatever, right? It's supposed to be a private conversation. He didn't use my name, but once he used my position title, CIA could go right back and said, okay, who were the former chiefs of electronic intelligence in our agency? They would have come up with my name. And so Danny, in a way, helped me out myself. And because of that, I had to scramble, put together a slide set, contacted CIA, said, hey, I want to join the UAP conversation. Here are my slides. They approved everything in that 74 slide deck. They approved everything. Nothing was redacted. They came back with saying, hey, it's all good. You can talk to your heart's content. And as long as you base it on these 74 slides, anything that you might build upon those slides that we already approved, you don't have to come back to us anymore. If you put out new information, you need to come back to us. So that was that. And that's why I came out, because Danny said a former chief of CIA, blah, 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 said this about the UAPs and UFOs. And it was out in open source. So I had to
Right.
out myself. And that's why I came out.
Now, had you always had an attraction to this topic, or did you feel that you just needed to contribute to this giant mystery and felt that maybe you could help out a little bit?
I was always interested in this because I'm a lifelong experiencer since childhood. And I've talked about that in previous podcasts about my lifelong experiences and how that all led to being at CIA. I always wanted to be at CIA or something like CIA because I grew up in the era of the original James Bond movies, with Sean Connery, and then you got the comedy show Get Smart, which is probably
Yeah.
how the IC really runs, because sometimes it's like a comedy of errors running around. You has the Man from Uncle, Girl from Uncle, um, I Spy. You remember all those shows in the '60s about espionage and spying and so forth. In the middle of the Cold War, so I wanted to be in CIA. I also wanted to be in the Navy, so I thought that was kind of cool. Go to sea in ships and go to different countries and stuff. So I did all of that, and so I always felt like I was led in these particular aspirations I had in my life to do what I'm doing. And that's how I ended up at CIA. I actually applied to CIA while I was in the Navy. And they said, yeah, we were really interested, but go back to school after you get out. I went to the Navy out of high school, get a college degree in anything. What you're doing in the Navy is of special interest to us. So just get a college degree and come back to us. And that's what I did.
That's awesome. And when you were, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this, but when you were involved with the CIA, did you ever work on UFO/UAP programs?
No, not programs. Um, CIA is an intelligence collection agency. We collect. We process what we collect, we analyze what we collect, and we do production. That is, we write reports to the policymakers, including what we call the first customer is always the president. And then what we provide to the president would then share with whoever the president wants to share it with in his administration. And we also support the major policymakers like the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So, we support policymakers, we support the intelligence committees of Congress, both on the House and Senate side. That's our customer. And so it wasn't like I did UFO work. It's just that as a collection agency, I collected signals for CIA, clandestine collection of signals intelligence. And so happens that in that collection, there was UFO data embedded in it. And so we were looking at UFO data because it was in our collection. It was in our purview to look at this data, and here comes this UFO.
Am I allowed to ask what that, without getting too specific, for us who would not know, what does that UFO data look like? Like, does it just come down in a transcript? Does it come down in binary code? How does it come down?
Well, two forms. We get electro-optical data, and that's collected with NRO satellites analyzed by NGA. Now, NGA prior to being NGA was actually part of CIA. It was part of the Directorate of Science and Technology. And Building 213, which is now in the outfield of the Washington Nationals ballpark, used to be where National Photographic Intelligence Center used to be. And so that part of CIA actually, developed the Corona satellites, the early imaging satellites, before there was an NRO. And so we did it all because the C in CIA stands for Central, and we were like the intelligence agency before all the other, we call it sister agencies, were created by Congress because they got mad at CIA for something that we screwed up. Every other agency of the big five agencies were created because of a CIA screw up. And so that data looks like photographs that you see. Like, for example, I said I saw an orange orb. These aren't the little orbs that showed up behind Brian Jackson's shoulder on his show. They weren't these little ones. They were like big craft.
Did you see that?
Yeah, and
Did you
in
see?
fact, I did, and I did a screenshot focusing on that part and sent it to him, so you could see what everyone else was seeing. Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
that was incredible.
Yeah. So,
That was
and
incredible.
as far as signals data, it's all electromagnetic data recorded on high bandwidth tapes. Back then, it's probably all digital now. They probably just stream it down like everything else. But back then, when everyone was listening to cassette tapes and CDs, it came in some kind of media form, and we would process it in the lab to look at squiggly lines on lab equipment like oscilloscopes and spectrum analyzers. And we knew that when the Russians were testing their ballistic missiles and they were tracking their missiles with their own radars, that they were also tracking other interesting objects that were flying around with them. And back then, before there was a NASIC, there was Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patt. They said, oh, it's just, Russian countermeasures for ballistic missiles. And it wasn't that. It was actually what they were looking at. They did not know. They thought it was us messing with their missiles. We thought it was Russian technology. So same with like what Bob Jacobs said, when he photographed some UFOs messing with the Atlas ICBM. Same thing happened to the Russians. Similar things happened to the Russians as happened to Maelstrom. So, we had intelligence that there were things going on in the Soviet Union and in Russia. So that piqued our interest. And that's how we got involved in it. So yeah, it's just a bunch of squiggly lines. Signals intelligence, other than communications intelligence, which is like people conversing over cell phones, whatnot, other than that, everything is squiggly lines. It's all electromagnetic energy that you have to process and analyze.
Your fascination as an experiencer of this topic, which has led you to a number of, high inquiries from people behind the scenes and in podcast and YouTube form, you know, do you think that you were able to, really add a real different idea to the UFO world while you were speaking on it? Were that you were able to have your contribution, your say, or did you feel that there was still more to come?
I felt like there's more to come. I knew there was a lot more to come. I only talked about what I personally knew firsthand. And because of that, people asked me for opinions of what somebody else might have said. And my attitude has always been that's their experience, that's their professional life. Talk to them. I'm not going to like comment on somebody else's experience. I take everything at face value, unless it's like completely bonkers, where I have contradictory information from what some witness may have said. And I said, nah, that doesn't sound right to me. Um, I just let it go at that. So I don't think I made any additional contribution. I just wanted to provide a little bit more context to what at least what CIA was doing, what the intelligence community was doing, particularly with orbs.
Right. And we'll get into orbs a little bit later, but the fact that you did your contribution, you stepped aside as we got about 3 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. John Ramirez is our guest. Do you feel, John, that this what we're seeing now is trending in a proper or good direction, or do you feel that this entire topic is being, you know, covered up with, sand and lipstick?
I wouldn't say sand and lipstick. It's going in a proper direction, with a little more wind, let's say. I think before we were fighting high tide, and now we got a little more wind in our sails to go forward. But I mean, the folks who are talking now that you see, even on the Age of Disclosure film that was premiered at South by Southwest, they're not saying everything they know. They know a lot more than what they say. And so, yeah, we're getting. I don't think we're translucent rather than opaque. We're not in any way, shape, or form transparent. We will never be transparent. We will always be at the best translucent
So
because we.
does it make you laugh then when you hear, Tim Burchett almost pulling a Khrushchev and slamming his shoe on the desk
Oh
when
yeah,
he's talking about how we need transparency in this field?
yeah, it does. And because for one thing, he doesn't have a top secret clearance. He has a secret. That's why he couldn't get a skiff, because in order to walk into a skiff, you have to have a top secret clearance in order to discuss top secret topics. And the entire topic of UFOs is top secret still. Uh, so
Right.
that's in that sense, yeah. I mean, I keep saying he's on the wrong committee. Damn it. What do you say? Dab gummit? You're on the wrong committee, Tim. You should go and try to get a seat on HIPSI, the CIA subcommittee of HIPSI, if you want to know what they know. And they do know a lot more.
Well, you know what? We know that they're just giving us the tip of the iceberg, you know, but I guess a lot of questions that people have is we got about 30 seconds to go here is why is this such a top secret? Why is this, being so covered up? Is it about, there's a great debate right now. Is it about the aliens and the ET contact, or is it about the technology and the toys that they are going to have? John, I'm going to get you to answer that question when we return on Spaced Out Radio for the second half hour. It's a rarity. He comes around about once every 75 years, like Halley's Comet. John Ramirez, former CIA agent, here on Spaced Out Radio. First time I'm getting a chance to interview him, even though him and I have talked a few times personally and face to face. It's a pleasure tonight to have John Ramirez. this on Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back. All right, we're clear. So, John, just a reminder, our YouTube and podcast audience can hear us, okay? Just our radio side cannot.
Right, and I see some great questions coming up. So someone's asked if will be time for questions. I hope so, because
Yeah,
I have no presentation. I have no agenda. I'm going where you want to take me.
yeah.
And
I am going to try and get some questions
oh
in
yeah,
the final half hour
yeah.
that we have with you. So I put your questions, start your questions in capital letters in hour number 2, and I will try and sneak them in even earlier than that, guys. Let's say hello to Louise, first time in our chat room. Welcome to SOR Chat. Sarah Michelle, how are you? Donna Lair, nice to see you again. And who else do we have here? Let's see who else has come in. All right, questions are already coming in. Deborah Rooney, thank you. All right, and you know me, John. I always like to say hello to people. Me. Welcome to SOR Chat. You liars about everything. Oh, thank you. Nice to see you coming in polite for our first time in our chat room. So, you know what? You got a choice. Really, you have a choice. You can either hang out and have some fun and enjoy the night without being an asshole, or you can, you know, leave, be like the captain. Aye, aye, and goodbye. So that's your choice. Daryl, how you doing? Good to see you. Blue Cruise, thanks for joining us. RCM Mike, RC Mike CHS, welcome to SOR Chat. And Zaruni, welcome to SOR Chat. Eli, I got your question. And Ant-Man, Cody Eiler, good to see you. Trucker Andrew, we'll see you in a couple days, buddy. We're caught up now. Dirty Filth, how you doing? We expect a thumbs up from you. There it is. Thank you. And there we go. That was a jam-packed half hour. I'm already worn out after that half hour. I really am. You know what? I could sit. John could probably attest that I was sitting and listening to a conversation at a table with John and Science Bob going at having a great conversation. I just sat there for like an hour and a half and I shut up. I just shut up and listened because I don't get that. Being that way up here, stuck in the north, we don't get that kind of conversation here. So Davey's going to enjoy every moment. Do I remember anything? Not a thing, man. But I do know this. I was in absolute heaven. I was in absolute heaven just listening to these guys swap stories, man. Oh, man. And the hard part for me is trying to figure out their lingo because they go into like these alphabet words, like I don't know, NGO or NGA or CIA, all their technical terms that they've broken down into small acronyms. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, man. Fragtall, welcome to SOR Chat. I'll get to your question in hour number 2. Blue Cruise, nice to see you. All right, we are caught up there. John, we got about a minute and a half here, my friend. Choosy Heretics, thanks for coming on in. What a wonderful night so far. I want to crack the window.
Yeah.
It's a little warm in here. And you keep breaking wind.
Yeah, that's me.
That's right. Yeah. It's that time of the year, man, where we don't need the heat on anymore. All right. Big thank you tonight to Linda, Pam, Big Dog, Brian, Mel, WD40, Area 53, T-Bone, Bob, JSCO, and Deborah Rooney for the super chats. We appreciate the love and support. It's a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis here on SOR. Don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why? We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check it on out. Here we go. Here we go, the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for tuning us in as we're going to bring John Ramirez back in momentarily. But first, we want to remind all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. John Ramirez is back on the show. We are talking about the intelligence community and the UAP phenomena as we continue on. John, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here. And I'm
Yeah,
loving
we're
the
proud to
questions.
have you here.
Loving the questions coming in.
Yeah, they're going to be really good. We'll get to those in hour number 2.
Yep.
You and I had a very interesting conversation with Martin Willis and Science Bob in San Francisco,
yes.
where we were talking about the way this story is being, lack of a better term, manipulated. There's a narrative that is being run. There is a few people who are kind of like the chosen ones who have taken over this UFO story. And I just want to get your thoughts on that. Is this a good thing for moving the ball forward, where they're trying to push the UFO public who's been doing this for years, if not decades, aside and say, we'll take over now. The big kids are on the block. We'll take over.
I said in my very first interviews back in 2021, early 2022, I used this phrase: what you're going to experience is a controlled dissemination. And I stand by that still, because that's what you're experiencing, a controlled dissemination of information. That is to say that they will release enough to satisfy people's curiosities that there is something there, but they're not going to tell you about any of the technology that has been exploited from what I call source materials, the source metamaterials, the source craft, or even the NHI. At most, I would expect that as this controlled dissemination matures, the government will admit, yeah, we have crashed craft, materials from crashed craft, and dead non-humans. But they're not going to tell you about the intact craft that have landed. They're not going to tell you about any cooperation with live NHI, because that just gets into a big mess, a bigger mess. So full disclosure is when they actually tell you, not only do we have like wreckage and dead aliens, but we also have these cool craft that landed, and we're working with all of these aliens from here, there, and everywhere. And they're helping us with developing technology for us. You'll never hear about that. That's full disclosure, because as you hinted, the technology is what is being protected. It's what we did with the materials that we got, what we did with it. And it's not necessarily fancy flying machines and super cool propulsion systems. there are other things that they did related to power generation, for example. That was a big one for CIA, power. Why is that? Because all of our spy gadgets rely on batteries. And you can look it up. The lithium ion battery was actually invented by CIA and then seeded to industry so they can market it and we can buy it back on pennies for the investment dollar. Uh, Things like that. So you get bits and pieces of some of this technology coming back without um, knowing the source of that technology. And sure, we have some brilliant engineers and brilliant scientists working on it, but the original work was done by the government and then seeded to industry. That is the part of the Philip Corso story that I fully agree with, that we did seed this technology. And I know that from first-hand information, that we did seed technology to these aerospace contractors, except they weaponized it because that was what the Pentagon wanted. You know, they wanted to weaponize this technology to give the United States a strategic advantage over its adversaries in case of a full-blown nuclear war. So they're not going to show you what we did with that technology, but I personally believe that they should release the materials and the craft at a minimum, because civilian scientists, academic scientists working at these universities and working for private research companies, they're not going to build something to kill people. They're going to build something to make life better for the rest of us humans on the planet. And that's what I want to see from the government, is to release this technology so that we can do something with it other than more efficient ways to kill each other. And that's where the Pentagon mindset is. You know, they're there to win and fight wars. You know, that's what their purpose is. But there's so much
Where are
basic
these
research.
where are these toys in your guesstimate? Where are they doing this? Is it 29 Palms? Is it Area 51? Is it Wright-Patterson, Dugway? You know, where are they doing this?
Well, I think what I know is something from under the sea was recovered by CIA. It was a joint program with the Office of Naval Research. So something under the sea was recovered by CIA with the Office of Naval Research and sent to a contractor in Seattle. Without mentioning the contractor, you know what contractor that is. There's one aerospace contractor in Seattle, and that's Boeing. So Boeing
Yes.
builds airplanes, right? They also build satellites, but they build airplanes. And why would something under the sea be of interest to them? Because what was under the sea was something that could fly.
Wow.
So some of that work is done by the defense contractors. Other work is done in Nevada. You need some place which is very secure and you can hide. And you can hide it in Nevada. A lot of space there. And you can hide it at like China Lake. A lot of space there. Dugway, a lot of space there, and underground. Definitely there's underground. There are rumors of underground. I say rumors because I have no firsthand information about any kind of underground facilities in Nevada. What I know is what you guys know, based on what other witnesses have stated. That's what I know. But I do know that Dugway definitely has underground facilities. And Dugway is huge. These places are like, you know, use the state of Rhode Island. They're like that kind of size under the ground. And a lot of it's for biological containment. I can understand that because Dugway Proving Ground is a place where they do biological research. They have a BSL level 3 facility there. It's not 4, but 3. And I believe that the actual Area 51, what you can look at on Google Maps, Google Earth, with the airfield and the hangars, I don't think any of that work is going on there at all. People
Me either.
say it, but it's not at the airfield. That is an airfield for the Air Force to fly its new prototype aircraft or experimental X-craft. They fly it out of there. But as far as working on like UFO craft, that's a lot of hearsay, and I know people firsthand who've been there, and none of that work is there. They told me none of that's there. It's nearby. I've been near there. I've been like 50 miles to the west at the North Range where Jason Sands had his encounter. He did not have his encounter in Area 51. It's at the North Range. It's a separate area in that vast Nevada test range. And I've been there, and I know that we flew something not in inventory. Let's put it that way. Over that North Range. That's a whole nother story I really didn't get into much in my interviews. But
Well,
it's, again,
now that you
first,
didn't get into it much, I have to ask you about it.
yeah. Okay, so um, one of the things I enjoyed about, other than meeting you and Martin and of course Science Bob, it was meeting Jason Sands. He was there. He was a guest speaker there, as you remember.
Yeah.
And we compared notes. And he said that, yep, he and his team went to Beatty, Nevada, overnighted there, and then in the morning went to the North Range. And that's where the encounter happened. Well, I go, that's like 50 miles away from Groom Lake. Why did you say Groom Lake? Well, Dobser approved him saying Area 51 because nothing happens at Area 51, right? It happens on what he calls Site 2. There's Site 4, Papoose, Site 2, which is in the North Range. And I was in the North Range doing some work with, in 1994, the fall of 1994, the S-300 surface-to-air missile system. It's a Russian SAM system. In NATO, it's called SA-10 Grumble, but we had a whole SA-10 unit, firing unit there, with all the radars, the missiles, and everything, right there in the North Range, and we were flying everything against it. Science Bob's Musketeer team was one hill, collecting signals. That's what they do. Air Force team was on another hill with their jamming pods, adjusting them for that radar. And we were like tracking everything in our inventory that could fly. F-14s, F-15s, F-16s, everything in the inventory, F-18s, everything in the inventory in 1994. Maybe not F-A-18s. Yeah, they were there. One night, my colleague Cheryl and I were told to leave the mountain. It's called Tolicha Peak. You can look it up. Tolicha Peak. It's a electronic combat range, one of two at the North Range. The other is called the Tonopah Electronic Combat Range. I was at Tolicha Peak. And I went to Beatty, Nevada, overnighted at a motel. That's where we stayed. And we drove to our range every morning. Same thing with Jason Sands. He overnighted at Beatty, Nevada at a motel and drove to the north gate of the North Range, which is closer to the Tonopah base. And that's how he got in. I went to the south. One night they had a special craft and it said, "You're not cleared for this craft." And in 1994, I was cleared for just about everything in our inventory because I worked in the office that did analysis on worldwide fighter aircraft, bombers, missiles, all of these big weapons. I had clearances for all of those systems, including Minuteman III and how they worked. But one craft we were not allowed to be near because they were having a special test. Who was there were Raytheon engineers. So something that Raytheon engineers were cleared for, they could like run the S-300 against. But we were told to leave. Next morning, we went back to Tolicha Peak, to the break room, had our coffee in the morning, and they were very excited, these Raytheon engineers, about the previous evening's test. And they were talking a little bit out of school until one of them saw Cheryl and I in the break room. And they all of a sudden goes, shh, 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 shh. Can't talk about this. But I got enough information that some special craft was flown that we were not cleared for, that Raytheon knew about, and they were running the S-300 against. Now, here's some background information before we went to Tolicha Peak for the S-300 test. CIA had a Russian immigrant living in the US who was a senior officer for the S-300 system, like a battalion commander for the S-300 system. And we were debriefing him. I was in the debriefing room with Directorate of Operations officers from the National Resources Division. And they're the folks who talk to American citizens. They can talk to American citizens if they volunteer information. This guy volunteered information about what he knew about the S-300. And in the course of the debriefing, he mentioned something about the capabilities of the S-300. And he said this, and you know, the S-300 has a UFO mode.
Has a what?
UFO mode of operation.
What
And
does that mean?
so, yeah, that's what the debriefers wanted to know. And so they asked him, you know, UFO? Yes, unidentified flying object mode. They can detect and track UFOs with that radar system. That's interesting. Because in the signals for the radar, which is called the flap lid radar, we did detect a mode that didn't make any sense because the radar was creating tracks, and we have ways to look at the tracks of Russian radars. Whatever they see, we can see. And I'll say that much without saying how we know. But fact is that whatever the Russians see on their radars, we have a means of processing that signal so we can see what they're tracking. And something was tracking that was incredibly fast, that zipped across the sky, and we dismissed it. CIA electronic intelligence officers dismissed it as an anomaly of the system or some kind of test mode, because nothing can fly that fast. You know, super Mach, double-digit Mach speeds. Nothing can fly that fast. But he said there was a UFO mode. We must have
Wow.
tested something that we owned, that was one of our craft, that Raytheon was cleared for, against that radar. All right. This happened back in like 1994, the fall of 1994. Okay. And that's where I was at Tolicha Peak. After that debriefing with that Russian emigre officer who was like a battalion commander for the S-300, we had the S-300 right there in Nevada at Tolicha Peak running through the test, and they told us to get off the mountain. But Raytheon could stay. Fast forward to Stephen Greer's Disclosure 2.0 event. Remember that? Where Mike Herrera came out? Well, he had a Raytheon guy there. And they put up a picture of, he says, this is a Raytheon craft. It was a V-shaped craft with 9 segments. He said, I was at a test range, and it wasn't at Tolicha Peak and another one, where Raytheon flew this. And I go, huh. Years later, you know, I think that happened in what, 2022, when Greer had the Disclosure 2.0. So this was like 94 to 22. I go, wow, Raytheon, that's what I suspected, that Raytheon had a craft. And this guy said, yeah, Raytheon had this craft that's V-shaped, 9 segments, and they tested it at a range, a different range. So I put it all together and saying, yep, that's probably what they were flying back in 1994. Something that Raytheon was able to exploit to run against a radar that a Russian officer told us had a UFO mode. Just to see how well can this radar work against our reverse engineer craft.
How does the public know what is a reverse engineered craft and what is a UFO?
Simple. Aerodynamic. Our craft has wings and look like something with wings that can fly. Triangles. We have our triangles and we have our V-shaped craft. I don't think we have saucers. I don't think we have saucers. I
But
was
we do
told
have triangles.
we have triangles. I was told of two craft that we do have. One of them, strangely, and I could not write down the designations. My memory fails me, but this craft I remember started with the letter K. So just call it a K craft. Something with the letter K. It wasn't a TR-3B or anything like that. Something with the letter K. One of the two craft that we have. They're cislunar. That is to say that they can go from Earth and between Earth and the moon. But they're not going to be warping anywhere to another planet called Serpo or anything like that. But we can really get out there in a hurry if we wanted to.
I talked to one insider, and a lot when him and I first started talking, he said to me point blank, he's like, "Don't ask me about the moon, and don't ask me about any secret space program." He goes, "I
Yeah,
can't talk about that." And but one day the conversation got to black triangles,
yep,
and I said, hypothetically speaking, since you can't talk about this because you have to put it in hypotheticals, I said, where would these big triangles land? There has to be a base for them somewhere. You know, they're going to be noticed going over Nevada. They're going to be noticed going over Ohio, where Wright Patterson is. They're going to be noticed. And his answer to me was, who says they land? Hypothetically speaking, who says they land? He goes, hypothetically speaking, wouldn't it be cool if we could take like a hopper up to that craft, crew unloads, other crew gets off, and they just continue flying? What do you
right.
think about that?
And so, um, oh, I want to put a, can I, before I answer that, can I give a shout out to Jim Goodall, which I think you had a
Yes.
guest on? Jim, I happen to be in Oro Valley. I'm a neighbor of yours. You just don't know it. I live down the street
Oh, you two
off of
got to get
Rancho
together.
Vistoso. So yeah. But anyway, uh, that would be a really cool concept. What I was told about what the purpose of these two craft is something that Jim knows very well. ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance. That is the ISR mission the Air Force has. Persistent ISR, not being seen. And that is what we do with these craft. They spy. They take pictures. They collect signals. That's what they do. So it'll be cool not to land. Now, how do you not make it land? Will you run out of fuel? Well, not if you're using regular propellant for fuel like a jet engine or a rocket motor, you're going to run out of fuel. But if you have, let's say, a source, a nuclear source that can create heat up, thermally heat up, and an ion way of producing ions, that's a way of propelling the craft. The nuclear source isn't going to run out anytime soon. And the ion propellant, you might need to refurbish that, but you don't need a whole lot of it to really go where you need to go when there's very little friction. And so that's possibly what your witness said to you, that in so many words. I know that there is a nuclear powered cruise missile that the Russians have. We call it Skyfall. That's the NATO nickname. The Russian nickname translates to Storm Petrel. It's a nuclear engine. It can stay up there forever.
Wow.
And it's a nuclear cruise missile. right? And how they kind of skirt the idea of not having weapons in space is you have to declare where you think space is. In the United States, space starts at 50 miles.
All right, John Ramirez, we have another hour. You are listening to This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, John, we are clear. We got about 6 minutes. I'm going to turn things over to the dirty one here to go over his cartoons. Hi, Susan. How you doing? And there you go, Dirty. It's all yours, my man.
Hi, Susan. How are you doing? Thanks, Dave. Make sure you let that dog man out and give him some snacks and throw the tennis ball for him. Yes, all right. Still haven't figured... Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good night. Still haven't figured out this new boom arm and camera thing here, so apologize, it's not as close as it should be. And I'm going to refrain from trying to hold it up so that everybody can read the thing. Anyways, it's Carl, Stanton, and Alan. And they're trying to figure out their way on Earth. So they're trying to play with a spirit box or a spirit board. And Alan's like, why don't we use one of those ghost boxes? Carl says, trust me, I've seen this work in a film. Nothing can go wrong. So, unfortunately, in the grand scheme of the cartoons of the three gray aliens, they're going to get in some trouble. Fabrice is going to have to come save them. And that's kind of how the little comic's going to work out. Because, of course, they're going to summon something they don't expect. I mean, they're just aliens coming to Earth, trying to figure out some stuff, and they pick up a spirit board and read up a little bit on it and have at it, and there you go. Yes. Morris. I don't know who Morris is, but apparently we're sending healing vibes to Morris. So everybody send healing vibes to Morris and or pizza. Pizza's always a good choice. Cat and human. Bob, that's basically Mrs. Filth. She's half cat, half human. Sleeps 90% of the day, wakes up, eats food, does her cross-stitching, disappears into the darkness. Mix and repeat. Oh, hey, Bob, check it out. Look at that, Bob. Look at that. Yeah, I know. Put that in your special box. Remember, Bob, if I meet some kind of gruesome end, I have a card, and Sasquatch and or Dogman will send my severed hands to you, so you can put them in your severed hand pickle jar collection. Guys talk entirely too fast. I don't know how Dave does this. He's got to have like a 40-foot screen to be able to see what everybody's saying. Hello, Fast Hemi, Woo Riders, Bob again. Anyways, I hope everybody's having a great night. Also, Susan, healing vibes to you as well. Pieces as well. And you know what, Susan? The next time you're outside walking around, you're going to find a $5 bill rolling towards you. An American $5 bill. So that's like basically $10 million Canadian. Nice. Christine. I wish I had a Friday and a Wednesday. Half price chicken wings at the local pub. Don't have to get up early in the morning. Lex Diaz, probably. Ooh, who's got the better severed hand collection? Les Diaz or Bob Birkins? Jeez, what have I done here? Anyways, this is hilarious.
How you doing, Dirty?
I was gonna get into the cartoons and junk, but we started talking about severed hand collections. So
yeah,
I bet you like all the secret alphabet agencies have all types of like Dogman, Sasquatch, severed hands in a jar somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Anyways, I'm going to
Thank
go
you, Dirty
deliver the
Phil.
cat some snacks.
Appreciate
Very
it.
important.
Give him a pet for us.
I will. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Dave.
Thanks, Dirty
Thank you,
Phil.
Mr. Ramirez.
All right. John, we have about a minute 15 before we come back. I think you're blowing a lot of minds here tonight, which is good. You having fun, John?
Sure, it's great. I like this free format. I mean, what you see, reason why I like Space Out Radio is that it's not structured as much as some of these other podcasts. You know,
Yeah.
I don't like that because if you feel like it's being scripted for you,
Yeah.
and what you have here is just a free flow of information. Let's let it all out, and that's what I prefer. Because once you get me going, I don't stop. You have to stop me.
Well, you can join Jim Goodall and us in Vegas next week if you want.
I can't go. I'm sorry.
I know. Maybe next
can't-
year, pencil us in.
Yeah.
All right. Let me quickly say thank you to T-Bone Times 2, Deb, JSCO, Bob, Area 53, Mel, Linda, Pam, Big Dog, and Brian for the super chats. And Jim Goodall wants you to get a hold of him so that way you guys can chat and maybe go for coffee.
Yep, I'll do that. I'll get a hold of him.
All right. Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio. Thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. We'll get back to John Ramirez momentarily, but first we want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network, our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Avizandum. Avizandum is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Former CIA agent John Ramirez is here. We're talking everything UFO tonight. And so far, if you've missed the first hour, it has been an education. Little Timmy James, our UFO reporter, he's in the background. He's like, I got to cut all this stuff up, man. I got to cut all of this stuff up, and he's excited. John, thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate you.
Love it so far. I haven't even begun.
I want to get into before we get to some audience questions here, the aspect of where people are finding UFO news now. You and I had that talk in San Francisco about the way that it seems to be going to YouTube influencers, and that the story of the threat narrative, and that there are certain people in this field that seem to be taking over that narrative, like the chosen ones, and nobody else is able to get news. Is that directed from the top, or is that directed from people just wanting to try and make a buck off this field?
It could be a little of both. I would say that I know for a fact that the someone said, I don't want to hear about CIA. Give me the real stuff. Well, CIA is the real stuff. We've been doing this UFO work since before 1947, and that's why you're hearing CIA stuff, because we and the Air Force have managed this all along. But to get to your point, Dave, I know for a fact that there are influence operations. Absolutely, there are influence operations. There's something called the Open Source Center, which is now called the Open Source Enterprise. Previously, it was the Foreign Broadcast Information Service. It's more than a clipping service. It's more than cutting out newspaper, magazine articles, or recording foreign television news broadcasts. Their job is also to manage the open source enterprise. And they do that by influencing the influencers. They weaponized open source. How do I know that? Because I was in a meeting where they talked about we're going to weaponize open source. And they do it through, believe it or not, gaming, online gaming. There's role-playing games. Um, a lot of it has a lot of the hands of CIA in it, the hands of an intelligence community. You know how in gaming that you develop a character and somebody else develops a character and you interact with that character?
Yes.
Yes? Well, someone at CIA thought, wow, if we can do that, wouldn't it be cool to have one of our recruited agents in a foreign country working for us and an officer here stateside being able to contact that recruited agent, pass coded information in the context of a game? How would you detect that? It's be undetectable. In a massive role-playing game like that, undetectable. And so that's one way of using open source through gaming. And also certain agenda messages need to be conveyed. There is no Project Mockingbird like in the old days. That was mostly print journalism, newspaper journalism that we influenced. But it's all open source, and there's a continuation of that type of collection of intelligence using open source. And we also convey agendas through open source. If we can influence certain influencers, they have their following and they can influence a large portion of the UFO community, particularly if a UFO witness latches on with that influencer and becomes a regular for that influencer, you know. So I'm not going to name any names, and I know you won't either, Dave, but I mean, you can look back at all of the sources of UFO information now, who they have on constantly, who seems to be always available to them and no one else. And you get the idea that, you know, maybe they're being utilized mutually for mutual benefit by having them speak and convey information. So I think
Yeah,
that goes on.
because it is getting tough because, our people that listen to this show, and I listen to the fans all the time. They just want to know, where is the truth? I can try and bring it. The other people may try and bring it. We're all trying to work for the same thing, but nobody's working in conjunction with each other. We're all kind of working individually. And a lot of times the audience says, where's the truth? Where's the proof? Where is the evidence that we need to make an informed decision on whether or not, this phenomena is actually real? And in the end, it's the public who gets hurt when a narrative is controlled, John.
Right, yes. But the control narrative suits the government just fine because they're not ready to openly be transparent. And they'll never be ready to be transparent because in order to do so, we will have to reveal what we did with the technology. And that technology, as I said before, gives the US a strategic advantage over our adversaries. So I think it'll lead to some lesser level of disclosure. At a minimum, I think the government owes the American people the fact that, yes, we do have recovered crash craft and we do have dead non-human intelligence beings in our possession. But are they going to talk about any live ones, like J-Rod? Will they say, yeah, J-Rod was real? I don't think we'll hear that from the government.
Okay, so
Unless they preserve J-Rod's body. So, yep.
from what you have been able to learn, how many species are we in contact with
I have
or
no
currently
idea.
working with?
I have
Are
no
there
idea.
people? Are there people who know?
Somebody must know. I would say this, that they're typically, I was told there are like 5 types, not necessarily 5 races or 5 groups, but basically you get a humanoid type, let's call them Nordics. You get a reptilian type, you get an insect type, and you get some kind of biomechanical type. Let's say they're grays that tend to be like either tall or short or whatever height they are. And then you get those are like hybrids in between. I think Jason Sands being that he encountered, this so-called bluish being, was like a hybrid looking being because it looked very human, with the exception of certain features like no earlobes, but otherwise look very normal, like a head, 2 eyes, nostrils, a mouth, appendages where they expect them to be, a torso, and feet. So that could be a hybrid type being, but I say there are types of beings that tend to be common, but I don't know how many independent like beings from different systems they are. Do somebody does somebody know? I don't know if they know all of them. Uh, I got the feeling that talking to some Navy folks that the beings they work with are different from the Air Force beings, and that there's competition between the Air Force and the Navy, and those two programs are separate, completely
Hmm.
separate. Um,
That is very heavy in order to hear that, you know. And I understand why they would want to control the narrative on this. I do. I just didn't expect it to hit the mainstream as hard as it has. I mean, whether it's the YouTube channels, whether it's the podcasts, whether it's, News Nation or whoever, it just seems like they've narrowed down who's allowed to go public with this information, with the whistleblowers, you know, uh, with the information, and it doesn't seem to be, you know, much room for error or margin for expanding that at all. And if you're not one of the chosen ones, you don't get anything.
It seems that way, doesn't it? Well, the thing that concerns me, not even on individual so-called whistleblower or witness level, is how the UFO narrative has become corporatized. And that concerns me because right now it's corporatized in the defense industry, these defense contractors. But if you even removing it from the defense contractors, is still some kind of corporate entity behind it. There is a board of directors behind some of these large organizations that you hear about now, headed by very prominent people. They have a corporate board of directors. And we know that TTS has had a corporate board of directors. And so do all these other organizations that are supposedly civilian. And if you look down the list of corporate directors, you might find ex-government people within that boardroom. That's what concerns me. And the price of admission is expensive. You don't join
Yes.
for free, you have to pay dues. And if you get
Are you
invited,
talking?
you're
Uh,
not free to talk. You have to go
sorry to
through.
interrupt you there. Are you
Mhm.
talking groups like Soul or Salt or any of these like Avi Loeb's group? There's so many different groups popping up. Skywatcher being the latest group, where everybody just seems to be jumping on the bandwagon because there's a potential multi-trillions of dollars on the lines here if this technology comes out.
Lots of money to be made. Lots of money to be made. I would suggest scratch beneath the surface of some of these organizations to see what deep pockets there might be behind that organization. because even the movie The Age of Disclosure, that didn't come out of Lou's pocket, and that didn't come out of Dan Farah, the producer director's pocket. Somebody paid for it. And I would say right now that I did not appear in The Age of Disclosure, the final production. I was invited to provide witness testimony for it, and I provided over 2 hours for that film, of which not 1 second made it into the movie. And there were several other people that I know who did not make it in the movie. It's not because they were afraid or they requested not to be in the movie. We had the option of not going, not participating in the making of that movie. We had an option. Do you want to do it or don't you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do anything that will move this discussion forward. And if it's this film that does it, I want to be part of that. So I was invited, and it gave 2 hours of testimony. It was back in February 22, 2023. February 22, 2023. I did my thing in Los Angeles, California. And I see Camille James Harmon. She's an actress in Hollywood. It was off of Mulholland Drive. And anybody in LA would know where Mulholland Drive is. It's a private residence, so I won't give out the address. But I filmed my part there, as well as other people. And later that the evening I was there, we gathered at a restaurant, and nice restaurant, and it was all paid for. It was all paid for. And I was joined by Lou Elizondo, the director Dan Farah, Bob Fish, another witness. Terry Lovelace was sitting next to me, myself. On the other side of me was Bob Jacobs and John Blitch were there. Bob Fish, my testimony, Bob Fish's testimony, and John Blitch's testimony were omitted.
Why do you think that is?
Because we talked about experiences, and they didn't want to talk.
Oh, and they were trying to keep it. They were trying to keep it nuts and bolts.
Just wanted nuts and bolts. I think Jim Simivan, who was part of the film, talked about his experiences, and none of it made it into the film. They just wanted nuts and bolts.
The money man whose name keeps getting bandied about, including on this show, is Peter Thiel from Palantir. We know that he has donated millions to Enigma Labs to help get that going, in a tune of between $5 and $8 million. There is question of whether or not he is in control of the UFO narrative via the YouTube influencers through Jesse Michaels. And I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think it's Peter Thiel that's pulling the strings right now, or one of them?
I would say it's that class of billionaire, like Peter Thiel, that might be pulling some strings or might want to pull strings. But it takes a lot of money to disclose. Disclosure doesn't come free. It takes a lot of money to do what Skywatcher? It takes a lot of money to do that. What Jake Barber's doing. What he wants to do, it sounds like he wants to lure a UFO craft down and be able to acquire it and then exploit it. That's what I think their goal is to do something like that, using what he calls psionics. That's fine and dandy, but it takes a lot of money for all of that equipment and getting people together and doing it. It's not free. So I would say that it could be that billionaire class of people who have I would say an investment opportunity to make by doing this, that they would want the technology for whatever reason, that they would exploit it themselves for whatever purpose for themselves, and that's why they're doing it. But as far as pointing out to people, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put them in a position to do that. These are questions that they can be asked directly. They may deny it, but so be it. But Yeah, there's a corporate side to this, and a lot of money's being poured in to do
A
this.
lot of that corporate side has gone towards what we have labeled on this show as the threat narrative. UFOs are evil. UFOs are bad. They're gunning for us. It started with the To the Stars Academy back in 2017, where Tom DeLonge went on saying that we got to get nukes up in space in order to blow these things away. They seem to have a fear of our nukes. We see Ryan Graves, and
Mhm.
this isn't shots at these people. This is just actions being pointed out. Ryan Graves starting a non-for-profit about with pilots, military and commercial pilots having close encounters on a threat narrative with these craft, if we could call them that. I mean, everything seems to be pointed towards a threat. Is there a threat, John?
Well, I tell you what, when the Pentagon's behind anything, everything the Pentagon does is cast in a threat narrative. That's their job. But a threat is not necessarily hostile intent. A threat, in that sense, it's something posed as a threat. And so we don't know. Let's say disclosing UFOs, is that a threat? Probably not. But we don't know the unintended consequences of disclosure. So there is that issue that if we do disclose, uh, it would pose a threat to, let's say, world financial markets, or it will pose a threat to people's personal religious beliefs. But is that hostile intent? I don't think so. If NHI want to destroy us, they could have done so if they have that kind of technology. Do they fear nuclear weapons? I would say that's a good thing to fear, nuclear weapons. Uh, but as far as blowing them away, why? I don't get it. There are people in the Pentagon there actually were people in the Pentagon who held very sincere, deep religious beliefs that they actually were, I would say, more traditional fundamentalist believers, interpreting the Bible literally. And so they did think that what we're looking at are demons. And it's just their deep held belief. And one such individual um, defunded ALSAP because this individual was in a position where he could defund it. And so he took money out of ALSAP. And so that did occur. You can call him the Collins Elite, but I don't know where that name came from. Well, that's the name that ufology gave them. I don't know the source of that name, but there are people who have those beliefs.
90 seconds to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. John Ramirez is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Do you think then that if there really is no overall threat to humanity, because I agree with you, they would have done it when our best weapons were swords and bows and arrows, before, if they really wanted to take over humanity. Do you think then that along the lines in a 1-minute answer that threat narratives create budget?
Yes, it does create acquisition dollars.
Pretty
And
easy answer, isn't it?
acquisition dollars is what buys weapons. And
It also shoots down things in order
mhm,
to get more technology.
mhm.
Are we doing that? Are
I
we?
don't know if we're shooting anything down. My understanding is that some of them are landing. They're coming to us.
I'm sure they wouldn't trade a sports model for an F-35 though, especially considering that there's a kill switch in an F-35. Well, John, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break at the bottom of the hour. John Ramirez, former CIA agent, is here, and we are having a great time with him. We got him for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott. Still having fun, John?
Yep. Want to answer some questions.
We're going to get
There's
to
some.
those here
Yep.
next. We're going to get right into audience questions right after this. So we got a ton of them. Yeah. So Tim, our UFO guy, says if you want to stick around longer than that, than just the next half hour, he'd love to have you come on with us. It'd be just audience questions at that point.
Okay.
Right on. Let's do it. Yeah. He's jumping around now. He's fist pumping. This is a guy who the second time I ever take him to my Bigfoot spot has a sighting. All right. Yes, we know everybody for the 1,008th time. We know that there is issues with the StreamYard audio right now on the music side. On our podcast side, if you go listen to the podcast after the recording, it is absolutely perfect. Why it's doing this on StreamYard, we have not been able to figure that out as of yet. StreamYard has a bleeding of audio inside of it that we're trying to figure out. So we're not sure if it's fully on StreamYard on my end or a combination of both. But yes, we are very aware of the audio issues on the music side on as we broadcast. That's why tonight, if you notice, I'm letting the music play. I will be dealing with the music after Las Vegas because I don't have time to do anything before, man. I really don't. My next 10 days is going to be a lack of sleep. It's going to be amazing. I'm so looking forward to it. Yeah, it's too bad you can't join us in Vegas, John, because getting to sit down with you and Jim Goodall would be quite the experience. Do you have Jim's contact information?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Okay, because he said in the chat room that he was wondering if you were free tomorrow to go for a coffee.
Yeah, I'll get a hold of him. I
Okay.
can find him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had his number. I was going to send it to you.
Oh, I don't have his number. I have his address. He gave me his address.
Okay, I will.
So
I'll
just
send you
it
Jim's number on Signal right now.
Yeah.
Let me get it for you here. Ooh, there it is, little Jimmy Goodall in my phone. All right. All right, I sent you his phone number.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, perfect. No, Deb, I didn't know that there was a problem with the music. Thank you for pointing that out. Thanks, Deb. Uh-huh. Appreciate you, my dear. The sarcasm is real in that one. Uh-huh. Runa, how you doing? Thurston Howell the Third, how are you? How's Lovey doing tonight? Please give us an update. Plant Watering Citizen, how are you? And all right, just so everybody knows when I get to the questions, because there's like literally about 24 questions, I am going to be asking the ones that are relevant to tonight's conversation. Okay? So if it's not relevant to tonight's conversation, the chances of it getting read are questionable. Questionable. I'll use questionable. Mm-hmm. We got about 40 seconds here. All right. Thank you tonight to Brian, Deb times two, T-Bone times two, GSCO, Area 53, Mel, Linda, Pam, Big Dog, Brian again, and Bob for the super chats. Greatly appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. Yes, Amanda, I will get to one or two of your questions. And we're going to come back in like 12 seconds. Here we go. Dave Scott, thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in around the world, as we want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. John Ramirez continues right here on Spaced Out Radio, and he's wanting audience questions. So if you're in our YouTube chat, put them in capital letters. We will get them to John. John, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
All right. Start off with Kim. She actually sat with us in the restaurant there for a little bit at UFO Con, and she is asking Harold Malmgren, because this is a hot button
Oh, yeah,
topic. Is he
right.
a whistleblower or just a witness?
I think he's a whistleblower. No, let me withdraw that. I think he is a witness, not a whistleblower. I think he's a witness. I believe he knows a lot more than what he had the opportunity to say. I was very sad to hear of his passing. I can disclose that his daughter Pippa Malcolm and I are friends, and we've met before here in Tucson, had some interesting discussions on this topic. And I can say that he had much more information than he was able to convey from the time he decided to come forward until his passing. So I wish he had more time with us, but he would have shared a lot more information. I'm not at liberty to share what Pippa shared with me because I don't have her permission to share. It's up to her to share that information, but it's very fascinating.
About 6 months before he passed, I actually took a chance and messaged him on X about coming on this show. And he said he would absolutely love to, but his health was in rapid decline, and
Yeah.
he didn't know if that would be a good situation for him, especially because we're a nighttime show and he needed to get some rest. So I said, not a problem. And that was my only communication with I'm going to call him a hero. I think he's very heroic. But I mean, on the flip side, we're with his name coming up posthumously here. And I never get to use the word posthumously on this show, John, so I'm excited about that. Do you think that he has asked his daughter Pippa to release this as almost like a deathbed confession sort of deal that we've seen so many times before, where, you know what, I'm gone, who cares? And you can release all of this once I am away from this earth?
That might happen. It's up to Pippa to do so if that situation occurred, where she's able to do so. I will say this much. I learned of the Nazi involvement with CIA in this topic, with UFO topic, and he did have some information regarding that. And I will leave it at that because I've been saying all along that you need to look at how people focus on the 600 rocket scientists with Dr. Werner von Braun. Well, CIA hired 1,000 more SS officers, die-hard Nazi SS officers, to work for CIA. And a lot of technology and information came through that way. And so I believe he had information to corroborate that. But we'll see if any more information comes out. He does apparently, Harold did know a lot. He served several presidents, and so he did have a lot of information about that.
All right. Terrence is asking, question for the awesome John Ramirez. What can you tell us about 2027? And thank you for your courage to discuss the truth.
All right, well, you're welcome. I will say this. There were some American government officials. They're assisting in the disclosure process behind the scenes. Back in the September of 2022, they invited me to meet them in Washington, D.C. And these officials requested anonymity, which I will honor. I can say this: they were not CIA officers. So during the course of the meeting, which was held in a SCIF, it's a sensitive compartmented information facility, SCIF. One of the officials mentioned, I didn't mention, one of the officials mentioned that the year 2027 emerged in the various social media venues. And I was asked about my knowledge of that year. And I said, yep, I acknowledged that, yeah, it seems to loom large within the channeler community, spiritual consciousness communities. They're the ones talking about 2027. And I suggested that why don't you research what Anjali Schultz and Chris Bledsoe have stated about these future years. And keep in mind, this is 2022, so 2027 was 5 years away. And I was pressed for my own personal opinion. And I reiterated, I defer to the channelers. I don't know what's going to happen in 2027. The channelers seem to be talking about it. I did say that I referenced Louis Elizondo, told him that in 2022, that same year that I talked to these folks in the SCIF, stated that we should engage in a hobby for 5 years and all will come out by then. So I gave that out. And 5 years from 2022 is 2027. So maybe it's some kind of disclosure timetable. But when they further pressed me for my personal opinion, and I said, I personally hope that these NHI beings might make their presence known by then, that they control disclosure, not humans. They can show up anytime they want to. They chosen not to, but suppose they do show up in 2027, then it behooves the American government to start disclosing everything it knows about NHI and their technologies now. Let's use these 5 years to start moving forward. Otherwise, if you don't disclose anything and they show up on their own accord, that's an uncontrolled, unpredictable shock to the system, and that would be disastrous. That's the story behind 2027. I never said that we're being invaded by ETs in 2027. They're going to land in 2027. A lot of bullshit came out in social media by these social media influencers, but that was completely untrue. It was just a discussion about what I conveyed from the channelers, quoting Lou Elizondo, and my personal hope that the government would start disclosing before they show up on their own, and that's 2027.
Hopefully they do.
I
Hopefully
hope
they
so
do.
too.
You're very passionate about that. I could feel, that you feel like your words have been twisted there.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think they were. I think. Let me share this with you. I've been pushed back by CIA for 3 things, and one of them was 2027. One of them was 2027. The other was the Nazi influence over the UFO research by CIA. That's one of them. Don't talk about the Nazis. The second is don't talk about military abductions at all because criminal activities have occurred. And you don't want to get embroiled in criminal activities, talking about criminal activities. Don't get involved in that. So, Nazis, Mill Labs, and 2027. They're the three topics that CIA came back and said, we're very uncomfortable with this.
I can see that. Let's go to Eli. John, what do you think of whistleblower Bob Lazar's legitimacy and the upcoming documentary S4, the Bob Lazar story by Project Graviture?
Well, I knew about Bob Lazar because a lot of my CIA colleagues and I were avid fans of Coast to Coast AM when, you know, the talk about Bob Lazar occurred, you know, through John Lear talking to Art Bell. And I heard about Bob Lazar and said, that's interesting, you know, and I wasn't able to in any way corroborate anything what Bob Lazar claimed back then. But I would say this, that, you know, I and Jim Simivan on the same evening were interviewed by George Knapp on Coast to Coast. Jim went first, and I went second. During Jim's interview, George Knapp asked him about Bob Lazar, and Jim said, "Yeah, he's totally believable. You know, I mean, I think he's totally believable." And Jim told me that he got a call from CIA saying, "You can't talk about Bob Lazar. Don't talk about." He got the word, "Don't talk about Bob Lazar." So add that to the mix. Why would CIA, if Bob Lazar was complete fake, why would CIA give a damn about Jim Simivan talking about Bob Lazar saying that, you know, he might be believable? I'll leave it at that. I'm looking forward to the S4 documentary.
His story has been told so many times.
Yeah.
Do you think a new documentary can actually tell us something new?
I think that his story has been brought out in bits and pieces. It would be interesting to see a fresh look at it from the perspective of what we know today. Because back then, we had zero disclosure. It was all opaque. Now we have a little translucent disclosure. And we know that from other whistleblowers and from other witnesses that there is a program to reverse engineer these craft. And that's what Bob Lazar said. I worked on reverse engineer craft. And before everybody said there's BS, there's no reverse engineer craft. Now we know there is. And so it'd be interesting to see what that documentary would say from today's perspective and who else will be on that documentary. Who will be speaking on that documentary along with Bob Lazar.
Let's move on to another question. Let's go to Frag here. Is there any more detail? Okay, we talked about 2027. So I'm going to skip that question. Let's go to T-Bone. John, what about this case about the 23 Soviet soldiers turned to stone by a UFO and aliens? Can you elaborate on this? Have you heard about this one?
I read the FBIS, Foreign Broadcast Information Service, clip that from Soviet press or Russian press. It was Russian then. So just because our open source folks clip out something doesn't make it a CIA document. It just means that some analysts at CIA tasked open source in CIA report on anything the Russians are doing with aliens and UFOs. And so they duly did their job of clipping it out. It went into the archives, it got released. So I can't say because basically CIA didn't corroborate this. It was just something that an analyst tasked. Let me know about anything in the press in Russia about UFOs and ETs. And so here's this article. I don't know if this happened or not. I don't know.
It's pretty wild if it did.
Hmm.
My goodness. Let's go to Lex. Would a future war be the debut of NHI technologies by the U.S. government, or would they use them in secret?
I don't know how you can use a weapon and keep it secret, or use NHI technology and make it secret. Once it's out, it's out. For example, the F-117 Nighthawk was worked on in the late 60s and made its debut um, during the first Gulf War in the 90s. That was like 30 years, or like 20 years when it first came out. And once it was out, it was out. So I would say, yeah, you're not going to keep it secret. And I would say the one technology I know about, would prevent World War III from happening.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Well, let's continue on here. Let's go to yes, no, maybe. Hello, John. When working to train the Chinese to spy on the Russians, did any of them mention any UAP or orbs they had seen? Nice to have you come back to visit. Cheers from New Zealand.
Okay, so one of the things that CIA did not redact was the fact that CIA and the People's Republic of China had an intelligence sharing agreement that led to the building of bases in China by CIA, staffed by CIA and NSA officers alongside our counterparts in Chinese intelligence to spy against the Russians. I could not believe CIA did not redact it. I could not believe that. But they didn't, so I can talk about it. We did provide a instrument to detect orbs, what FTD back in the day called domes of light. They called it the domes of light phenomena that appeared with Russian ballistic missile tests. So we did build a system based on the ground that we were able to track these ICBMs flying across the sky from the launch point back west in Turatom and Plesetsk in Russia, across the sky and landing in Kamchatka. So we had that whole field of view. And so we did detect, we were able to build a detection device, and we briefed them on the domes of light. Now, after we briefed them, China established the UFO Society of China. Nothing happens in China like that unless the Communist Party of China approves it. So after we briefed on these domes of light following these ballistic missiles, they started an official, semi-official UFO society in China.
That opens up a whole new ball game. I mean, the cloak. This is why I love talking to people like John, is you learn all this cloak and dagger type of stuff. I mean, this is only supposed to happen in a board game of Risk. You know what I'm saying? And here it is being played out in real life. So I find that amazing. Absolutely amazing. Christine has a question for you, John. Are you interested in near death experience stories that kind of confirm UFO ET existence?
I never had an NDE, so I am interested. Most of mine have been experiences I've had myself directly with NHI. I would be interested in knowing more about NDE, and I think they're credible. I think people do experience what they experience, and it's hard to explain.
I don't want to experience one. Out of everything I've experienced, going that close to death, I'm just not ready for that. I'm too young and beautiful still. Kim wants to know, is Majestic 12 still a thing?
I asked about Majestic 12, and I got a big zero back. That yes, there was a committee that managed the UFO narrative for the United States government at a very high level. It may not have been called Majestic 12 or MJ12, anything like that, but there was a committee. So I would say, I think, is it still a thing? I think there is a committee or a group of highly placed individuals who are controlling the narrative still to this day. I don't know if they're called Majestic or not, but something like that existed. As far as the documents go, You had on a counterintelligence officer from AFOSI last night. And I would say this, I was contacted, or I was introduced to a CIA counterintelligence officer, and he was very interested. He's retired, and he was very interested in this topic. And he said when he looked into it, because he had the ability to look into it as a CI in counterintelligence, he said there were real documents in there and there were fake documents in there. And it was released to control the narrative, to swerve the narrative into making people think about ETs from Zeta Reticuli coming 39 light years only to crash. That we wanted to push the ET narrative, the ET hypothesis. And so that was the purpose, is to like move the UFO community into that direction so that they can work on things more terrestrial based on other ETs who are not from Zeta Reticuli. You know, Zeta Reticuli has no exoplanets. It's a binary star system, alpha and beta. There are no exoplanets around that star system. So where do they come from? You know, they're still here. They're here. They've been here a long time. And that's where I agree with your witness yesterday, that they were here for a long time, probably preceded us on this planet. And we want to protect that. And so I was given two names of two individuals who may have had some influence on those documents. One of them is James Jesus Angleton, who's now deceased, and the other is Bobby Ray Inman, who's still with us.
Interesting. Let's go to another question. Let's go to T-Bone here. We got 2.5 minutes. John, what do you make of the Chris Bledsoe experience?
I never met Chris Bledsoe. I've been in contact with him. I know people who've joined him. He recently held a viewing party, I guess you would call it, in Wilmington, North Carolina. I take people's experiences at face value. I didn't have those experiences like he had. I had my own experiences. I don't expect people to believe me. They're my experiences. You don't have to believe me. So that's what I make of Chris Bledsoe. I would love to meet him. He's a lovely guy, I heard. And it's interesting that he got the Alphabet Soup to visit him.
It's very interesting, his story. I believe him too. And, you know, one of the things that I want to ask you about, because you brought up just a great point there about, you know, you don't have to believe my experiences. I don't need to believe yours. Does it surprise you, John, or does it make you scratch your head at, you know, some people out there, some of the critics out there just seem to get so bloody angry if you talk about your experiences? It's like complete anger where they turn like, where's your proof? That's BS. That never happened. You're a liar. You're this, you're that.
Yeah. It's because they never had their experiences. If they had experiences like many of your audience here who are now chatting, many of them are experiencers. If they had their own experiences, they wouldn't be doing that. It's almost like envy. Experience envy. Why don't they visit me? You know, why are they ignoring me? Why they're coming to you and not me? It's almost like that going on. And when you
If they
come
were
off
real, they would show up. Yeah.
I do have some information about Immaculate Constellation, though.
Immaculate Constellation. Well, you can't
Somebody had a
drop
question.
that with 40 seconds to go here.
Well, it's going to take a while to explain what it is, and I'm surprised no one wants to talk about it because it's not a big deal. Once you know what it is, it's not a big deal.
I will take that up because we're going to hold you hostage here for the next hour, or as long as you want to go. We're going to hold you hostage here. John Ramirez on Spaced Out Radio. And you know what? We got a bunch more audience questions that we're going to try and get in. Little Timmy James is going to join us as well. And apparently I just throw my pen on the floor for some unknown reason, because that's what I do around here. Spaced Out Radio continues with hour 3 next. listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott. All right, John, we got about 6 minutes here. I'm going to put you in the green room, and we'll be right back, okay? All right. God, are we lucky? He's going to go still longer. All right. As long as I'm not in the middle seat. All right. All right. Got that there. Let's set up Tim so he can come in. All right. Anybody else jump in here? Let's see here. I think the beard's about 1 pound. 1 pound of beard. All right. If I do not make it to your question tonight, I apologize. I'm trying to get through a bunch of them here. And there are a bunch. Let's bring little Timmy James in. Bring John in. We got about a minute 40 here. Thank you very much to Linda, Pam, Big Dog, Brian times 2, Mel, Area 53, T-Bone times 2, Bob, JSCO, Deb, and Deb times 2 as well. Shaq and Granola Grin, thank you very much for the love. Ian in the UK, John says, thank you for going the extra mile. This is so interesting. Appreciate that. We'll do our best here, guys. We're going to come out of this or start this hour off with Immaculate Constellation, see what John has to say about that, and then we'll get right back into audience questions. Black Rabbit, how you doing? You just missed that. You'll have to rewind on the 2027 timeline. John has already answered that question. It was in the last half hour, though. 30 seconds, guys. Thank you, Camille. Appreciate you, my beautiful friend. Misty in San Fran. Camille's awesome. We got to bring her back on. She's a great contactee story. Well, we're buffering on this and we're frozen. Yeah. Here we go with the final hour of Spaced Out Radio Night News. We'll bring him right back up here momentarily, but first we want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliate.
Can anyone hear me? Yeah, I lost everything from Dave's side. I just have uh, uh, my camera up and I can see the side chat. I've never heard of anyone at CIA saying that aliens are demons. That came from the Pentagon. There was a high official. Um, I'll say his name. I'll type his name out. You can research him. That's his name, David Shedd. You can write that down and research him. He actually believed that what we were dealing with um, was demonic, and he withdrew money from ALSAP. Um, not just ET tech, but we do share CIA tech with the public. We do seed our technology to the public, and now there's a way to do this through something called InQtel, and also we have something called the Intelligence Advanced Projects Agency. It's the DNI equivalent of or counterpart to DARPA. So we do share technology with the public through contractors, actually, not directly. Is some of that technology ET related? I can't say for sure, but if you look at all of what's happened since 1947, so look at 1947, look before at the progress, and then look past that, and we made tremendous progress in technology.
All right. Hopefully,
Oh, okay.
John. John, can you hear me now?
Yes, I don't see you, but I see.
I apologize
Oh, I see a nice alien.
for the technical issues here
Yeah.
that we are having. So we're trying to figure it out as we go on. All right, let's go to another question here from our audience. Let's go over to Xanos, who is asking, John, is there a faction in the CIA that believes aliens are really demons? And what do they think of this disclosure project?
I answered that while we were off the air. I said that I don't know anyone at CIA that believes that. I do know that there are folks in the Pentagon that do so, and I mentioned a name, David Shedd, which I put in the chat that people can research, and he actually did believe that we were dealing with demonic forces, and he withdrew money from ALSAP.
All right, and let's see here. Let's go to Human Carl. John, do you know what's going on at the underground facilities east of Sedona?
I do not. And let me put out an ad for Melinda Leslie. If you guys go to Contact in the Desert, please attend her talk. It is going to be outstanding. About 2 weeks ago, actually the weekend after UFO Con, she spoke to Tucson MUFON, which I attended, and she had the entire hour and a half, 2 hours to go through her presentation, and it is phenomenal. And what I know about these underground bases is mostly Melinda's data. She has videos, she has eyewitness accounts. There's something going on there. My opinion is that it seems to be an operational base more than a test range base. So if you look at Site 2, Site 4 on the Nevada ranges, they tend to be like testing, evaluation of technology. Whereas what's happening east of Sedona seems like an operational use of what was already tested.
Hey, John, Tim here. So we've got a question from Chris Teen. John, have you seen any UFOs recently?
No, I have not. The last UFO I've seen with my own eyes occurred on July 14, 2020.
Interesting.
What happened there? What did you see?
I saw a large orb, like not a personal small golf ball orb, but a large craft-size orb over our mountain range. As Jim Goodall knows, it's called the Catalina Mountains. And for Jim, it was over. It was over one of the not Push Ridge, but the name escapes me. That doesn't matter. But it was over the Catalina Range. It occurred during a CE6 hosted by Mark Sims. That's the radio modality for making contact. During that session, one did appear. And
Before we get to any more questions, John, let's ask you about Immaculate Constellation, because
right.
This was a big topic of discussion when it came down to the last UFO hearings with Matt Schellenberger. And from what I heard from people in the intelligence community, that normally when a name like that comes out, Immaculate was the program, and Constellation was like the sub program. And usually when these type of names come out, they immediately change the names of the program to recover them up. What do you know about this? And was it as big of a deal as what we were trying to make it?
Well, first of all, um, I would say that Sue Goff, the lady from the Pentagon, said there's no such thing. So she said the truth because she said that after they changed the name. So she can truthfully say there's no such thing. But when I read the document produced by Schellenberger, to me it sounded like Constellation is nothing more than a tasking of our existing constellations for detecting UAPs. And so we have several constellations in orbit. And some of the former names you might know, for example, there was the Corona constellation, there was a constellation named Argon, Lanyard, Rhyolite, so forth and so on. These are satellite constellations. And they're all tasked for certain missions. And you write tasking orders. You write tasking orders saying, when this situation occurs, we want this satellite to tune to this part of the electromagnetic spectrum, or direct your electro-optical sensors in this direction and start collecting. To me, that's what it sounded like, that if there's a detection of UAP elsewhere, that we want our space-based, NRO space-based constellations to start collecting. Otherwise, they would just ignore it. So you put it in something called a collection deck. A collection deck is a list of taskings for our satellites. So if you fly over Iran, you need to tune to this frequency because they have some interesting communications. You need to point your camera in this direction because we think there's nuclear activities going on in this location, so forth and so on. To me, the Immaculate Constellation was something like that, a tasking order. If we detect UAP, then these satellites will come online and start collecting data against the UAP. Let's not ignore it, let's collect it. Background for this is that when I was in the DNI, working for the National Counterproliferation Center, we had such a situation where I went to a place in Las Cruces, New Mexico. It's a NRO NGA base of operations called the Aerospace Data Facility Southwest in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And they were telling us that they see all this weird data and they're trying to filter it out. They didn't say it was UAP or UFO or anything. They just say there's data interfering with our images and we're trying to filter it out. And so they were filtering this stuff out. We know that the ground-based radars were filtering out any UFOs that are in the sky, right? We don't want to detect that. We're here to detect satellites and any instance of a rogue missile launch from North Korea or wherever. That's what the ground-based radars do in a north warning system over the northern part of Canada, run by the Canadians and the American government. So they were ignoring it, but Immaculate Constellation seems to be, don't ignore it. When we do detect, make sure that you have all of the entire array of collection systems targeted against the UAP so that we have data. I think that's what it was, based on my reading of it.
Do you think, though, that the program was very much operable regarding UFOs / UAP?
I would imagine that they still collect against UFO UAP because in 2003, 2004, I got the briefing on the orbs collected over Russia. And this was originally from, we have a SIGINT, let's see what I can say. There is a SIGINT satellite that collects electromagnetic signals. There was payload space to put an auxiliary collector on board for electro-optical, that is infrared. And so they were collecting these orbs over Russian space, which got our interest. So that started the Orb Working Group. And so we know that I can say that that data was collected, and back then it wasn't called Immaculate Conception. The constellation was there collecting just like stuff over Russia, and so happens the orbs were in the data that we were looking at, and it was not an anomaly. They kept seeing this data of these light balls of light flying in formation. And no, Dr. Eric Davis, they were not ball lightning. Derek Davis recently said, "Oh, we looked at orbs and there was just ball lightning." That is absolutely false. It was not orb. There was not ball lightning. It was actually an intelligence community effort to explain these orbs over Russia. Going back to our agents we have in Russia, they reported to us. We thought it was your technology, and we thought it was their technology. So even the Russians thought, just something strange going over their space. So yeah, that was back then. So since 2017, when uh, the videos were released, apparently someone in the intelligence community or the Pentagon, probably the intelligence community, said, well, let's write up some tasking so that when this occurs again, we don't ignore it. We don't try to filter it out. We collect it and we analyze it and we report on it. So yeah, I still think it's happening today.
Moody Mongol wants to know, John, what is your theory? Because I've kind of gone hard on this show about UAP being man-made objects and UFOs being something else. From the information that I've gathered, Moody Mongol's wondering what your opinion of that is.
Well, it was UFO all through when I was at CIA. We did not use the term UAP at all. It was UFO. But mention the orbs. The orbs are not structured. That is, it's not a metallic craft. It was some energy that we were seeing in the shape of a sphere or an orb. So it was not metallic. And it was reported that people were having some kind of communications with them, that there were messages being conveyed. A message was conveyed to me from the orb I saw over the Catalina Mountains. And that was, you know about us, and it's time for you to share what you know about us. And that's what got me to thinking, maybe I should start sharing what little I know with the community. So people got messages. So that's like a phenomenon. It's not structured craft. To me, a UFO, an object, is a structured craft. They be it triangles or saucers or whatever shape they are, cylinders like Tic Tac. That's not a UAP. That's to me a UFO. But when you see energy behaving intelligently, I would say that's the phenomenon. And so more of that was being seen because we have a lot of electro-optical collection systems in orbit. Because they were seeing, we start saying, hey, they're not just objects, they're actually something we can't explain, a phenomenon. And I think that's why they were called UAPs. I use them interchangeably all the time.
All right, let's go to Queen Peachy Keen, who is asking, how many deep pockets are in Antarctica?
How many deep pockets are, I don't know. But I'll give you an Antarctica story I do know. Okay. And I actually said this for the Age of Disclosure film that didn't make it. NORAD sees these craft all the time. And for NORAD, it's not like, oh my gosh, there are UFOs flying over Canada into the United States. They are very methodical about reporting it. A friend of mine was in the CIA Operations Center, the Ops Center, as a DS&T representative to the Ops Center. And one of his jobs was to monitor the NORAD communications traffic. So CIA is part of that communications. We can listen into what NORAD is doing. And so when he was on watch, he said that over the horn, NORAD reported 2 objects flying out of the Arctic Circle, flying over Canada into the United States. One object peeled off and landed in Nevada. The other object continued south and into Antarctica. Into. And NORAD duly reported it. And they didn't like hair on fire or anything like that. They were very methodical, very calm reporting it. And his job was to log it for CIA. This event occurred. The date was October 2013 when he had this experience as a watch officer. So there's something in Antarctica dealing with this UFO topic where there might be a base down there. I don't know, but he said, yep, one landed in Nevada, one went into Antarctica. And NORAD just treated it as like ho-hum, like, okay, let's log it down. And they weren't too excited about it. So to me, it seems to say that, some of those craft landing in Nevada where there was no military action against it. I mean, just like, oh no, we need to scramble fighter jets. Nothing like that occurred. To me, it kind of hints that, some of these craft might be ours and we know about them.
All right, we got time for one more question with 3 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. John Ramirez is our guest. Let's go to Derek here. Have you heard of any insider knowledge on the secret space program experiencers while in CIA? Now, Walter Bosley last night said he doesn't believe in the CIA program at all. What's your thoughts on this, John?
I never heard of secret space program in the context of Corey Good. What he said. I never heard of that. I did hear that we do have a secret space program, but like I mentioned, these are cislunar craft, which we use mostly for spying, ISR. They're cislunar. They can travel between Earth and the moon, get there really fast, and they have the ability to persistently linger over a target area. That's an advantage over satellites. Satellites have limited view. They're flying at 18,000 miles per hour, and they got to swing that camera in a swath, taking pictures of that swath, and they can't stop. But these craft can stop and linger over an area. That's the program I heard about. So I don't for SSP from the Corey Good standpoint, I tend to dismiss that. But yes, there's a secret space program, and the agency that runs the secret space program is NRO. They have stuff flying up there that I don't know about. Probably new stuff flying up there that I
That's
don't know
why
about.
we own the night.
That's right. And that's from the radar satellites. Lacrosse, Onyx, and Topaz were the 3 radar satellites that we have. Topaz is flying now.
All right, let's sneak in one more question here with 90 seconds to go. Amanda wants to know, what do you know about cattle mutilations?
I have no direct knowledge of cattle mutilations whatsoever. I would have to go with other researchers who looked at that, like Lynn Moulton Howe, but I never heard of cattle mutilations while I was at CIA.
All right. Doug Shelby, the Doug Shelby, is asking, do you know anything about the Nanda Devi? Nanda Devi? I've never heard of that.
I think it's what I read about it was it's a mountain range in northern India. That's all I know. Maybe Doug Shelby has more information and can enlighten us, but I don't know. I don't have any direct knowledge of it at all.
I'm just Googling it as we speak. The Nanda Devi mystery, how America lost a nuclear device, is the thoroughly riveting and sometimes bizarre story of how India and America tried to install a nuclear-powered surveillance device on top of the Himalayas to snoop on China.
Well, here's a story about China. I told you before, we were in China. So
That's
why are we
right.
snooping on China from within China? We shared a lot of information with China. Those bases still exist today. I know where they're located at. I can look it up on Google Earth because I know exactly where to look. And they are growing. They're huge, and they're building more of those.
This is Spaced Out Radio. Your host, Dave Scott.
Yeah, thanks for covering me there, John. I don't know what the hell happened to our camera. Turned on our second camera here, and I think Tim's handsomeness just blew the system, to be blunt. I don't know what the hell happened. My goodness. Like, I've been trying to get everything going here on our camera system, and it's just not working. No likey the camera right now. My computer, if it hasn't been one thing, it's been another recently. I'm getting frustrated. But that's okay. That's okay. All right, let's check out our peeps in the chat room here. All right. Oh. Runa is asking, John, have you met Jake Barber and any interest in getting involved with Skywatcher, like with Science Bob?
No, I've not met Jake Barber, and I have no interest in getting involved with Skywatcher. More power to them.
What do you think of Science Bob joining them as an advisor?
I would ask Science Bob if he's not here tonight, right? I would ask him if he joins Skywatcher, will they now control his narrative? Are they now controlling where he can appear and what he can say?
Well, I did ask him something similar to that. I said, does this mean you're going to be leaving SOR? And he goes, absolutely not.
That's good.
Yeah. His NDAs only pertain to the information that they chat about regarding the technology.
Okay.
Yeah. Uncle Jim Goodall's a night owl, man. You got to realize, I mean, during the day when he was in the Air Force, during the day he was working hard. During the night, that man was cutting a rug like no one's business. Black Rabbit, how you doing? All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to find your other question, Amanda. I got a bunch of them to go through. Human Carl, thank you very much for adding to the super chat. Much love to you, buddy. Let's see here. Amanda, you may want to repost that question. I'm trying to find it here. See if I did not see it there. Yeah, you may want to repost that. But we are taking questions only till the top of the hour. And then we got to shut this thing down. Do you want to ask some questions, Tim?
What's that?
Do you want to ask some questions?
Yeah, you want to give me voice break?
Oh, yeah. You're more than welcome to come on over here and ask some questions. I mean, it's not a question among friends. No, you're not sitting on my lap. Kind of rude there.
Yeah, I know.
You weirdo. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think we put a 6-hour show into 3 hours tonight.
Oh, easy.
Easy.
Phenomenal.
Feel like clapping for John.
I know, right?
Yeah,
I
can't find a question either. I'm looking for it.
Let's see here. Tony, I got your question. Dave just said it. Sent it. Oh, right there. Okay. I got your question. I got it. Yeah, X is packed tonight too. There's 226 on X, 264 on ours, and 1 on Twitch. All right, big thank you tonight to all of our super chatters, starting off with Linda, Pam, Big Dog, Brian times 2, Mel WD40, Area 53, T-Bone times 2, Bob, JSCO, Debaruni times 2, Granola, Shaq Valet, Camille, and Human Carl, not Alien Carl, Human Carl. Thank you for the love and support, everybody. That means a lot, very much a lot. We're going to get going in 7 seconds here, John.
Okay.
Half hour Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet. We got John Ramirez till the top of the hour. And we're going to get to more questions momentarily. But first, a reminder to all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. John Ramirez, former CIA agent here, answering questions about UFOs. We're going to start with VS here. John, what do you think is the link between AGI and NHI? And what is your opinion on the Chains of the Sea?
I've never read Chains of the Sea, so I don't have an opinion on that. I know it's a book that was recommended by Lou Elizondo, but I've never read it. I don't know if there's a link between AGI and NHI.
All right, let's move on.
I'm not too versed in AI anyway.
Let's get to Amanda's question. Are there alien-human hybrids?
I was told they were, and 2 occasions, separate occasions. One was the briefing I got, sponsored by the Office of the Chief Scientist and the Director of Science and Technology. It was the CIA historian who said that the CIA was interested in alien hybrids, alien DNA in humans. And they were tracking certain families with, apparently the children had some extraordinary abilities, and they were tracking the children as well as these families. And the second time, the individual who told me this was highly placed in CIA's, retired, and he did not know that I was briefed about this, and he confirmed that, yeah, aliens, the existence of alien-human hybrids is a compartment, but would not elaborate beyond that.
All right, we've got another question from Art Fraser. Great show, Dave. I wanted to know, were there classified projects investigating UAPs that the public never learned about? And are there any that he can now talk about?
Well, yeah, I did reveal that there was an orb working group that met, and it was sponsored by NGA, of all agencies, right? NGA has a major presence in St. Louis, Missouri. It's called NGA West, and they sponsored a community working group on the study of orbs that was at one time classified. I put that in as part of my slide deck for CIA to approve or disapprove. It was approved, unredacted, and that's why I was talking about this working group that occurred before ALSAP and actually led to ALSAP.
All right. So the next question from attorney to the EBEs. Can John speak to the agreement that Grush and Colonel Nell have talked about?
I can say this much. They're not treaties. There are a memorandum of agreements of what the NHI can do and what we can do, and their relationship with us. I do not have direct information. I'm sorry, I don't have direct information, but this information was provided to me by the Navy team, the Navy UFO team, which is separate from the Air Force. And apparently one of those agreements expired without being renewed. That's what I was told.
Oh, interesting. All right, another question. We got one from Derek. John, how would you prefer disclosure to be made public if you could choose?
If I could choose, it would be the President of the United States standing in front of one of the vehicles that we have recovered and saying, this wasn't made by humans, it was made by non-humans, and oh, by the way, here's one of the non-humans. That's full disclosure. I don't know if we ever get that, but if I had my druthers, that's what I would love to see. I think what we'll get at the most, we need somebody like the president to come forward and say that what we, the witnesses, have been saying from within the government, who worked in government, is true. That there is a UFO reverse engineering program. We have recovered craft. We worked with these craft to make something for ourselves that we can fly. And we've harnessed this type of technology, which we will then seed for the rest of humanity and go from there. But it will need somebody like the president. And I don't know if we ever get there, but this president probably, because you need someone in office who, to be frank, don't give a shit about how anyone else feels about anything. And because right now, a lot of presidents have said, I don't want to take responsibility. I don't want to be the disclosure president because there are unintended consequences, and I don't want to be blamed for that. You need someone who doesn't care about that and wants to go down in history as the disclosure president. So you need somebody
Totally
with that
makes
type of
sense.
personality. And speaking with some of the other witnesses from the inside, some of the senior witnesses, they believe that this administration probably has probably more willing to do so than any other administration in history.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. That's for sure. So, another question: the Andromedan. A question for John: What do what do the CIA knows about the Draconian? I'm
Oh,
sure that was supposed to say, what does the CIA know?
yeah. I'll go ahead and say it. um, there is a reptilian race on the far side of the moon that's hidden. CIA knows about them. There were remote viewers tasked for that target, and one of them never came back. That is, physically, this remote viewer is still with us. Mentally, that remote viewer is lost. He made one too many visits. He came back and said, yes, I encountered this reptilian race on the far side of the moon, my remote viewing target. They warned me never to come back. And what they did was they sent him back, and they did something where his mind never came back.
Wow. John, it's Dave again, and let's go over to 01. Is there a branch of intelligence or the government which would be interested in civilians who claim psychic interactions with alien intelligence? If so, where in society does someone in this space go?
Yes, there is a branch of intelligence at CIA. We are interested in that. We are interested in anything that, well, what we call it is the expansion of human consciousness and the advancement of human potential. That is part of CIA's mission, to study that. And we study that because we think we can utilize those gifts for intelligence collection. CIA is a foreign intelligence collection agency. We collect intelligence from inside foreign countries, hiring agents to do so who work for that country, who are traitors to their own country, but are providing us with information at great risk to their lives. And they do it for monetary compensation for goods and services. So they're well paid to do so, but we are interested in collecting information. So if there are people who claim psychic interactions with alien intelligence, we definitely want to utilize that as a source of intelligence collection. There is a program that I think, you know him as Steve. I know his true name. You know him as Steve. He came out with Courtney, and he said he discovered a first floor program. That first floor program is all about that. It's what within CIA, the woo aspect of looking at this topic. They look at a lot of things, including the time aspect, the time travel aspect of this program. So it's CIA that has that charter.
Yeah, Steve there for a little bit was popping into our chat room to watch the show every now and again. So that was always cool. Let's go to Ian in the UK. John, ET could have wiped us out a long time ago. Do you think they are more interested in humans for their own reasons?
ETs came before us, I believe. NHI races have been on the planet longer than humans, I believe that, and I think we were brought here for whatever purpose by one of these NHI races. And it's probably what we call the Nordics. They probably consider us their children, and they set themselves up as gods, and we worship them. So, yeah, they could have wiped us out a long time ago, but they have manipulated human history, human behavior, human belief systems because they set themselves up as gods, and we worship them. So, are there other interests? I don't know. I think there are conflicts amongst the NHI. I discount people who believe they're all space brothers and sisters, wonderful people. They won't harm us, they're here and to protect us and so forth and so on. But they're actually like very, they're corporeal beings who have the same emotions that we do, and they have the same ambitions and same foibles as human foibles, and they don't necessarily get along with each other. But I think some of them I think we're protected by at least one of the races, probably the Nordics.
Paramarv was asking about Eisenhower here. Do you look back at 1954 and believe that Eisenhower actually did make some sort of treaty with extraterrestrials?
Again, I said that I don't believe it's a treaty. I think it was a memorandum of agreement, far less than a treaty, that needs to be revisited on occasion. I've heard that, but I have no direct information about a dental emergency being used as the subterfuge for that meeting.
Do you think that incident or that meeting actually took place in your own opinion?
Some meeting must have taken place because I was told that this memorandum of agreement occurred during the Eisenhower administration. But I don't know if it was this 1954 dental emergency meeting. Don't know that.
All right, let's move on to another question. Let's go to Blue Cruise. John, are you allowed to discuss U.S. underground bases?
There is an agency in the intelligence community that's all about underground bases. There are two agencies. The Defense Intelligence Agency has an underground facility analysis center, UFAC. They looked at underground bases all over the world, including the U.S. And then there's the National NGIC in Charlottesville, Virginia, NGIC, National Ground Intelligence Center. It's the Army's equivalent of NASIC and the Navy's ONI. So it's the Army Intelligence Center that looks at underground bases. And so they do look at underground bases. It's telling that in the James Lakatsky's book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, It was not noticed very well, but one of the things he said that had OSAP been allowed to continue, they wanted to investigate Dulce, New Mexico. Now, why would he say that unless he had some knowledge that there was something underground going on there? So I'll leave it at that. But I would say Melinda Leslie is your subject matter expert on the underground bases in Sedona.
We only have time for a couple more questions. Let's go to Tony in the UK. Good morning, Tony. John, in your opinion, who are the men in black?
Yes, the men in black were CIA officers disguised as FBI. When we were flying the U-2 aircraft, they were silver. They were not black, they were silver. And they flew in broad daylight. Why broad daylight? Because those cameras are optical cameras. They did not have night capability. So they flew them in silver aircraft in broad daylight at 70,000 feet. They were subsonic, but still silver, streaking up that high. People thought that they were UFOs. And so they were visited. What did you see? What did you see? We wanted to know, what did those aircraft look like to a ground observer who had no knowledge of what that aircraft really was? So those were the men in black. Now, in the current context, if I would say, who are the men in black harassing U.S. citizens? I would say they're members of the Homeland Security. Members of Homeland Security. There was a investigator or researcher of Area 51 who was raided. You probably heard about that. Accompanying that raid were AFOSI officers from the Air Force and Homeland Security officers who confiscated his computers and all his data.
All right, let's go over to Camille here. Do you think the CIA would use autistic people for their broad consciousness, like in the telepathy tapes?
I would say that yes, I would make that general statement. Yes, I was told that there are families of interest to CIA, American families of interest to CIA, because their children had extraordinary gifts, and they were following these families. I was flat out told that. So in terms of autistic, those in autistic spectrum, if they have those gifts that could be of use to CIA, I would say we do not discriminate. We will make use of those gifts if they so choose to come to us.
Running out of time here. We got 4 minutes. Let's go to Jerry here. Is there a rival between various secret organizations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Within the intelligence community, there are 18 members of the intelligence community, and we're very combative as well as collegial, but we're also very combative. We compete a lot. In my experience, my personal experience, my competition was my counterparts in the Defense Intelligence Agency who did ballistic missile analysis, ballistic missile defense analysis. So we did, when we put out a report, we have to send the report to these other agencies for their input, and they send out their reports to us, and we don't agree all the time. And so there's something called coordination battles. We have to coordinate with these other agencies, and we fight a lot about what we put out.
All right, let's move on to another question here, John. Let's go to Kurt. How involved was Dick Cheney regarding the UFO topic?
I have no information about Dick Cheney and the UFO topic. I don't know if he was interested or not. President Bush was. He was definitely interested in the UFO topic. Then he had the Stevensville, Texas sighting. So he was very interested in that. I know that during the when the when the Orb Working Group was established, the report went to the Bush White House. So there was some interest there. They did report from the DNI level when Title 50, the civilian side of intelligence, was finished with the working group. They turned it over to Title 10, which is the uniform intelligence, Pentagon intelligence. That was all SAP. It was all Title 10. Title 50 is CIA and the civilian side of intelligence. So that report went to the Bush White House.
All right. Can we sneak in one more? Final question tonight for you, John. And this will come from JSCO. Your opinion of Dan Burrish.
Yeah, it was fascinating. One of the things I enjoyed was talking to Brian about Burrish. I don't know about J-Rod. I'll give you a story about J-Rod real quick. There was a J-Rod at CIA, and it's not an alien, it's a human. We had a director of the National Clandestine Service, NCS, where Jim Semivan worked. National Clandestine Service, the guy who headed that was named Jose Rodriguez, infamous for destroying all of the interrogation tapes. That's what he did on his own. Jose Rodriguez, his nickname was J-Rod inside CIA. That was his nickname. That's the only J-Rod I know. But I heard about the time aspect. So Bursch talked about ability to see time in the future. I told that was a real thing.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We got about 1 minute to go here. What is your overall thoughts for the UFO community listening in and wondering what is going to happen next? What's with the hearings? What's with the next 2 weeks, which seems to be very busy? I need a 1 minute answer.
Representative Luna put out a schedule of probably they're going to be talking to more whistleblowers and more witnesses behind the scenes and queuing up another set of hearings. So I'm looking forward to that. That's what's going on. I'm hoping that the Age of Disclosure film will find a distributor. Without a distributor, no film gets released to the movie theaters, and it was designed to be a theatrical release in a movie theater globally. And as Camille can tell you, without a distributor, your movie goes nowhere. So I hope they'll get a distributor so we can see the movie.
Rock in the background. Things in and out of the show. Get your horns up, guitar, belt, special thanks. Thank you to everyone in our chat room tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LM, Facebook, Spreaker, Space Travel, and X.
I know you're out there somewhere.
This is the NR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
Stay in line,
Together,
don't
my
make a mistake.
friends.
We're watching.
Yes, the Blue Train. That's Doctor for the Night. My friends, we shall fight again. Should you available your tickets to Rick Spot. And if you want to bring a friend, we have them. Good night. Good job, John.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed answering questions.
Yeah, man, you were fantastic. I really appreciate you doing this, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, sorry about the tech errors on the cameras here. I don't know what the hell's going on. But I appreciate you doing that, and enjoy your coffee with Jim tomorrow.
We'll do. And get as much sleep as you can, Dave, because it's going to be an early morning.
Oh, dude, I don't even think I'm going to bed. I'll
Uh,
sleep at the airport and on the airplane. I sleep good on a plane.
Great. All right.
All right, my friend. You have a good night. We'll talk
Okay.
soon, okay?
Bye-bye.
Be well. Bye-bye. John Ramirez, everybody. Because we have lost camera, we got to figure this out here behind the scene. We are going to cut this feed short. I don't know what the hell's going on here. We're going to try and figure it out. Little Timmy James. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Rob G will be filling in for me tomorrow and Friday. There will be live shows. And thank you to all of our super chatters. Thank you to all our new subscribers. It's been a hell of a week. I will see, hopefully, some of you in Nebraska at the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference coming up here very, very soon. I got a long day tomorrow, and it starts literally in about an hour and a half. I might get about a 15-minute break. Yeah. But it starts in about an hour and a half, and then I am driving to Vancouver in the middle of the night, dodging the elk, the Sasquatch, the bears, the deer, dodging them all, even maybe a moose. Could be. At least down to Clinton, it could be a moose. Right? So I'll see you all on Monday. I will be back Monday night for a couple of nights. Then we are taking Thursday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and Monday off because we're going to be in no shape in Vegas. Good night, everybody. We'll talk very, very soon. Love you all.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.